Theo missed ancient Egypt, but he missed his friend Kensu even more. One morning, he picked up his passporter tablet and typed 3000 BCE once again. With a click, Theo's room vanished, and suddenly Theo was back by the Nile River, standing right in front of Kensu. Kensu was curious about Theo's tablet and reached out to touch it, but the moment his fingers touched the screen, something went wrong. The symbols flashed wildly. The tablet buzzed, then went silent. Before Theo could stop it, the world twisted fast and hard. The warm sunlight of Egypt disappeared, and cold air filled their noses. When the sun showed up, they were still in 3000 BCE, except they were no longer in ancient Egypt. This time, they were standing in ancient Sumer, the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, or modern-day Iraq. Theo and Kensu were equally stunned. All around them stretched busy streets, canals, temples, and districts. The place was a port city on a river delta lagoon system, more like modern Venice than a desert settlement. It had mass housing, supporting a population of 10,000 or more. This was not a simple village. This was Uruk, the world's first city. Existing in southern Mesopotamia, Theo and Kensu stared in amazement. They had never seen anything like this before. One of the first things they noticed was the people. The Sumerians wore thick wool clothing that looked heavy and warm. Some wore long skirts or wrapped cloth around their bodies, and others had fringed shawls over their shoulders. This was very different from Egypt, where people wore light linen clothes to stay cool in the hot sun. Theo and Kensu guessed Sumer must have a different story for its people to wear wool clothing, even though it is hot. As Kensu stood, a girl about his age walked up to him and greeted him in a language Kensu didn't understand. Before leaving, the Sumerian girl gave Kensu a small clay figurine as a welcome gift. Theo's tablet translated her words as a friendly welcome to Uruk. As they walked through the city, Theo and Kensu noticed how planned everything in Uruk was. The streets were relatively straight and neat, with water canals running through important parts of the city. In Egypt, most people lived in small villages with winding paths, and only palaces and temples were carefully planned. But here in Uruk, the whole city was planned for everyone. The Sumerians of ancient Mesopotamia were extraordinary innovators. Theo felt a growing sense of awe as he began to recognize many systems central to modern life began here. Some historians even compared Sumer to a kind of Silicon Valley of its time, buzzing with problem-solving energy. And now Theo was about to see how. As they strolled along the streets, they passed by workshops where potters spun clay on potter's wheels, effortlessly shaping identical jars faster than Kensu could imagine. In Egypt, Kensu recalled, pottery took much longer time and manual shaping, but in Uruk, pottery was produced quickly in huge quantities, making it available to nearly everyone in the city. Theo realized the clay pots were like early version of modern-day food containers in our kitchen today. Trade pulsed through the city. Sumerian merchants loaded wheeled carts with grain, pottery, and wool textiles. Theo was amazed to witness wheeled transport functioning so naturally within daily life. These carts represented the first appearance of wheeled vehicles in recorded history. Equally amazed, Kensu was astonished at the sight of wheels, let alone wheeled vehicles pulled by donkeys or oxen. This was something which no Egyptian had yet seen in Kensu's time. In this era, Egyptians used animal-drawn sleds and wet paths to reduce friction. Wheeled carts weren't used yet. Kensu realized that because the Nile River served as the main highway for Egypt, boats replaced streets and carts. Like Egypt, water transport was also vital in Sumer. Overland travel was slow and costly, even with the wheeled carts. However, while Egypt traded locally along the Nile, Uruk traded to distant lands overseas and became the main hub of the world's first global trade network. Sumer relied on global trade to survive. Though it had fertile lands, it lacked stone, wood, and metals of its own. Despite being resource poor, Sumerians created a socially complex urban world more advanced than early farming villages. As they moved deeper into Uruk, both boys noticed people gathered around low tables, pressing reed styluses into soft clay. Theo recognized the early precursor of ancient cuneiform immediately, while Kensu stared in astonishment at the Sumerian writings he had not seen before. Kensu realized this was different from the pictorial symbols of Egyptian writings in the same era. Long ago, Sumerian ancestors didn't know how to write. But one day, they invented writing, and everything changed. Some historians believed earlier forms of cuneiform writings may have appeared before Egyptian hieroglyphs. This realization struck Kensu profoundly. Laws, contracts, receipts, inventories, payrolls, legal disputes, and even interest-bearing loans were all recorded on clay tablets, making ancient Sumer the distant ancestor of modern economic systems. Sumerian officials and merchants also rolled carved cylinder seals over wet clay tablets as part of their records. The seals appeared on doors and marked ownership of goods. The seals worked as portable personal signatures and were ancient equivalent to modern-day identity theft protection. Kensu recalled this was not like Egypt, where only the elite, such as the pharaoh or temple leaders, used flat seals. In Sumer, however, the use of cylindrical seals was woven into everyday life at every level of society. At the markets, Kensu also learned that ancient Sumerians liked to count by 60 instead of by 10. This unique way of counting later became 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute, and 360 degrees in a circle. Then, Theo realized how devastating the Tigris and Euphrates rivers could have been without Sumerian engineering, while Kensu marveled at the fields lined with canals outside the city, resembling those of Egypt's irrigation ditches. The Sumerians cleverly managed the unpredictable waters of Tigris and Euphrates rivers to prevent catastrophic flooding. By contrast, Egyptians also managed the Nile, but its regular floods made farming in Egypt far more predictable. Next, Theo saw how ancient Sumerians raised enormous herd of sheep. Seeing the sheep, Theo understood. The sheep explained Sumerian wool clothing. This is in contrast to Egypt, which grew lots of flax used to make their linen clothing perfect for the desert heat. Then, both boys were struck by the scale of wool textile workshops attached to temples. Theo marveled at how early such organized production appeared, which resembles that of modern manufacturing, producing standardized wool cloth that served not only as material for clothing, but also as a major traded good and as a form of wage. Kensu instinctively compared it to Egypt's linen-based economy. Then, along wide streets connecting the gates, temples, and palace, Sumerian soldiers marched in formation. As the soldiers passed by, their weapons glinted in the sun. In this era, Sumerian weapons and tools were already made of bronze, a metal that practically ended the Stone Age. Although not the first to use bronze, Sumerians invented the way to produce it at a large scale. Ancient Sumerians melted copper and tin together, turning into a thick, bubbly, glowing soup of bronze. The boiling soup was poured into clay molds that are shaped into axes, knives, and spears. When the poured bronze cooled down, the resulting material was harder and stronger than copper. Sumerian bronze tools and weapons gave their warriors greater advantage over other civilizations in this era. During this period, people in ancient Egypt mostly used copper instead of bronze. Copper was easier to make in Egypt. However, copper tools became dull quickly and broke easily during hard work. Because bronze was stronger than copper, Sumer moved faster into the Bronze Age, spreading even in the form of jewelry. On the other hand, Egypt continued using stone and copper tools for many years. Egypt's stone and copper weapons worked just fine as Egyptian armies didn't have to fight often in 3000 BCE. Egypt's deserts and seas served as barriers from invaders, and the pharaoh worried only about putting down rebellions. While Egypt was relatively calm, Sumer fought relentlessly, not against outsiders though, but against itself. That's when Theo and Khensou understood. Ancient Sumer was not a unified kingdom. Instead, it was a mosaic of rival city-states along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, each ruled by its own king. Sumer's rival cities stood in sharp contrast to Egypt's single, unified kingdom along the Nile. However, even with weaker tools early at the dawn of the Bronze Era, Egypt's stone monuments still stand today. Theo thought this rivalry between city-states may have driven innovation in Sumer. In contrast, Khensou sensed how different power and identity felt in this world. Standing amid the streets of Uruk, Theo and Khensou shared a silent understanding that they were witnessing the foundations of civilization itself. Sumerian mud bricks, canals, proto-cuneiform writing, two-wheeled carts, cylindrical seals, wool textiles, and planned city-states of Sumer would later shape human history for thousands of years. Theo realized that long before modern technologies, many of the foundations of civilization were laid in ancient Sumer. And through this journey, Theo had witnessed the beginning of the world as we know it. As the light shifted across the rooftops, the past porter tablet in Theo's hands flickered faintly once more. New symbols began forming along its surface, unfamiliar and unfinished, as though the device itself had not yet decided where or when it would lead them next. Together, Theo and Khensou remained in the heart of the world's first city, suspended between destinations. Whether the tablet would carry them deeper into Mesopotamia or pull them toward another ancient civilization altogether remained unknown. History stretched endlessly before them, and somewhere within it, another journey was already waiting to begin. To view how Theo first met Khensou previously in ancient Egypt, look for this picture and tap it.